Okay, we are live. I am super excited. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are joining us from in the world. Please put a comment underneath the video that you've watched this, tagged it, shared it with somebody. I say that all the time whenever I jump on live. Sharing is caring, right? And why do we come on live to have conversations? Is to get information out there and add value to our network. And today I'm very excited because we're on a countdown to an epic event next week in New York City at 11 Times Square, the Microsoft HQ. It was an idea a couple months ago, and now it's coming to reality. And I couldn't be more excited to have Audra Lamoon on the call with me right here, who is my co-founder with Retail ConX. And we have Jack Stratten on this morning, which I'm excited to talk to. So welcome, you two.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, April. Lovely to meet you.
I've been chasing you down, Jack. You've been all over the place, haven't you? Where have you been?
I have. This has been officially biggest, busiest and biggest month we've ever had at the tiny little, I call it a consultancy I run. It's not really, it's just like a tiny little kind of retail trends business. But we've had an insane month. And when we're busy, that just basically means I travel. So I've been, it's been ridiculous. Barcelona twice, Amsterdam, Vienna.
These two both gone to Vienna.
Yeah.
The same month.
Oh, did you? Yeah, I liked it.
You missed each other.
Yeah. Doing a lot of presentations, but also did a few retail tours. And yeah, it's just been absolutely manic, but very, very good fun. And of course, out there in the real world, seeing a lot of stuff that's going to be super relevant to the amazing event in New York.
Yeah.
Amazing. So I think what I wanted to get out of today's kind of call was to really introduce you to my network. You're obviously a retail expert, just like me. Paul's built an amazing community of us folks that have, got retail expertise, but a bit of your background, because this is the first time I've met you. Yeah. I've seen you out online, like we're all internet and LinkedIn friends at this point. I feel like when I meet people in real life, they're like, I know you. And I'm like, do we?
Definitely. Yeah.
But yeah, I'd love for you to share a bit more of your background. How did you get into retail consulting and starting retail trends? And then, and then we're going to talk about.
Sounds great. So I started out in journalism. I went straight out of uni. I did stuff way away from what I do now, like most of us, right? So I just I was at uni because I just wanted to get out of home. And then, so I didn't care what I studied, right? I just wanted to get away from the little town I grew up in. There at uni, I did history, came out, did journalism, and I got put on the retail desk quite early on. I didn't want to be on the retail desk. I wanted to write about films or sport or something fun. And I was like, oh, retail. And then of course, like anything, but I got to, for obvious reason now, I got to really like it. I got interested in it. So I was writing high-end kind of, it was a lot of like UK high street stuff, because that's always, very newsy, for some broadsheets and different things. But very quickly needed to kind of navigate out of journalism because journalism was dying, print anyway. And at quite an early point, I started writing for some agencies and consultancies in other places. That started connecting me into particularly kind of trends and insights, but also consultancy. Then I started writing for the agency that I now run and took over. This was probably like 15 years ago, Insider Trends. And what happened was I did a bit of consulting on the side for a few brands, but the bit that I was really interested in was always quite journalistic. I never really wanted to be a consultant where, I went into a business and built something for a year, not because that isn't fun, but it wasn't me. The thing I was always interested in were the new ideas. I'm someone that sort of prides myself on knowing a little bit about loads of things, not loads about any one thing. I think it's because I almost get a bit bored, like my brain's a bit manic.
Right.
I'm probably neurodiverse. I haven't done the test, so I'm not
I love it.
I have some manic energy, and I'm interested in absolutely everything. I love people, and I love ideas, and I love cities, and I love places. And I was like, this little niche of like kind of retail trends consulting, where you get to look at what's happening, what our customers are doing, what's happening in retail, how are stores changing, how's online changing, how is technology influencing all of that. It really connected all of it, because it meant I could be a bit journalistic about it, but I could be interested in people, the cities, the places, how politics are influencing that, but also just, how technology is, how retail is changing. So it became this perfect place for almost like how my brain worked, I think.
Wow.
And that's basically what happened. So I started out, I guess we were more of a pure consultancy, but we've ended up being a trends business where I just go and I work with lots of big brands, but for a small amount of time, talking about trends. So, helping them to understand what should they be doing with their stores? How should they be using technology? How are their customers changing? What should they be doing in 5 years? And I throw loads of ideas at them, and then I run away and do it for another client. I don't when they ask me to build stuff, well, because I think life's a lot about learning what you love, isn't it? And then what you love tells you what you're good at. You can get dragged into things that you aren't good at, and it's so important to stick with, with the things that you love, and that's really what I do now. I've just got into a situation where I work with lots of different brands around the world. Presentations and retail tours are my kind of big thing. And that's what I do. And I go to events like this to talk about interesting subjects where I try and bring in all the different things that I've seen. Yeah. So
wow,
I genuinely,
Can we ask for an example? So with these insider trends, when we look at malls, stores, parades, outlets, whatever, the window's generally the first thing we see, right? If we haven't been online, that is. And we could be met with a window. What is your first sort of advice to stores, etc., and malls to say about getting that attraction?
Yeah, so it's the thing that's really interesting is that's always been important. That was obviously important pre-digital. In fact, it was kind of a different thing pre-digital. But what's so interesting now is that I think we're at a point where almost conceptually, from the top of the business down, people are thinking very differently about the front of a store. For me, the pioneer always of this was Selfridges. Selfridges were doing Selfridges corner shop, right? That was a thing 20 years ago, where effectively, and that's like retail media before anyone talked about it. What they said was every 3 weeks, we'll do this mad, really complicated, amazing brand takeover in the corner of one of the most important bits of retail real estate in the world. And we're going to change it every 3 weeks. So it's Chanel this week, and then it's Nike, and then maybe after that it's like some students from a university who are going to do some mad thing. But they did it because they knew that was so important. And if they kept changing it and kept making it amazing, then people would come in. And I think so that they did that. And what's really interesting now is because of technology, it's like brands rightly are the best retailers and brands I noticed. They understand that part, that the front needs to be, it can't just be products necessarily, or it can, but it needs to be really interesting products presented in the way that makes you want to come in. So yes, it's about driving people in, but it's got to change a lot. But then you plug tech into that, and the possibilities are potentially infinite if it's done in the right way. And now one of the most interesting things I'm seeing around the world is retailers and brands going, actually, this is advertising space, not just for us, but theoretically for anyone, right? So when that part of it is fascinating to me, because I think the brands who do that really well and almost become iconic for those spaces, well, it's not just about getting people into the store. They can make money from that space. That is a moneymaker in and of itself. You see companies like this. There's a beauty retailer called Lico in Stockholm, and they will charge beauty brands to do stuff on their screens in the window because they've got this young audience, right, that love them, and they know there's a value to that traffic. People pay for that online, so why wouldn't they pay for it in a store?
That's a different way of looking at windows. Wow, I've never heard of that. I mean, I'm a retail operator, right? I used to run stores, and so fashion brands, all different kinds of brands, technology, tea, you name it. But the window was always something that, when we did store walks, we would always pull everybody out and start from the front of the store and kind of look at how it was executed. But like just that you just shared about looking at that as if it's your real estate of marketing that you can actually generate cash flow from. Wow. Can you imagine if more retailers did that?
Well, I think when I think retail media, that's for me the more interesting part, because I think the online part I get, because giant retail marketplaces like Amazon have known the advertising is potentially the biggest moneymaker anyway, right? That's old news to me. But the store part is really interesting, especially when you think that, I don't know, the amount of online sales as part of total retail sales in the US is like, I don't know, 15%. In the UK, it's like 30. A lot of Europe, it's 20. That's quite a big chunk. And you think, well, if 20 to 30% of people are buying online, you can afford to maybe go, right, some of this store, and definitely the shop window, it doesn't need to be about just selling products. It can be something else, right? So why not think of it as marketing? Why not think of it as advertising and then charge for that? Because there's a value to you driving people in store to look at those brands, you know, like an advert online. So it's sort of one of those things that I'm with you, April. It's weird to think of it in that way to anyone that's been in retail a long time, but actually it makes a lot of sense at the same time.
Yeah, but you know what? It makes a lot of sense. And, you know, I think back to like when I ran David's Tea and we were always struggling in the US to try and make those stores profitable. They're not around anymore. But we did have brands like Bodum and different brands in there that could have potentially, if we had put digital screens in there and advertised their product, they could have paid for us. That would have generated some in the square foot.
Yeah,
it's really interesting. Wow, what a concept. Wow, I can't wait to hear what you're going to talk about next week. This is mind-blowing.
Oh, well, I hope so. It's like, Sephora are doing versions of this as well. It's not quite the same, but you'll find that in a lot of their sort of flagship stores, bits of them will be not just like a concession from a beauty brand, but there'll be like a bigger thing where they've done something really that grabs your attention, or they've taken over a real prominent part of the store. And my understanding is that sometimes is coming with more of a fee, right? It's not just a normal concession. The brands are paying more money, and effectively that's retail media as well. That's advertising space.
Yeah.
So it's I think it's quite an established concept. But look, I love retail spaces. I'm biased. I'm massively biased towards stores. But the thing is, I think, getting better and more open at looking at, how can technology support them to have a future and then to be able to provide, great places for us all to go and support cities and high streets and malls and whatever. That's the bit. So that's why the advert thing is interesting to me, because I'm like, well, their tech can help.
Yeah, I'm definitely biased towards stores after running them my whole decade, my whole life. And then also growing up in an antique shop in the UK, right? Like I actually grew up in one. It's funny.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Grew up in one. Everything had a price ticket on it. Everything in our house was coming and going. There was customers coming in and being like, I'll take that off the mantelpiece, right? Like, it was wild. And then I watched my mom, build these amazing relationships and tell stories about every piece of furniture, about where it came from and, why somebody should have it. Yeah, it was such an interesting way to grow up. Never thought that retail would be my thing. But I did fall in love with it because of the people, and it's just so diverse. So I think the benefit, what I'm hearing as well on everything that you do, is like the benefit to somebody working in a retailer. Sometimes when we're heads down in a retailer trying to make that brand work, we aren't out there pounding the pavement, like doing competitive shops. We're not necessarily reading a lot of data from other people's places and trends. So somebody like you can really, really be beneficial to any retailers that are in the room next week, because they're going to get all this insight from your knowledge of traveling, working with different clients. Because for me, when I used to run stores, one of the number one things I would want to do when I first started in any organization was like, can we get a survey? Can we get somebody outside to give us like some information about what we don't know? Because we only know what we know. But having somebody like you come in with all of this information, wow, that's just super helpful, because you're traveling all the time. You see it all, right? And you're predicting things and trends.
Yeah, I think that's very much like where I've had success, or where we have success. Our USP for sure is, like, we don't try to compete with big consultancies. I'm not out there getting, doing consumer surveys across the world with millions of people in. Like, that's not what I do. I know that the thing I can offer is I'm looking at everything all around the world. New stores, new retail experiences, different kinds of customers. And then it's like, if I work with a brand or speak to a retailer, I can actually take them not just into different countries, but also different categories. Because I also think you get a lot of inspiration. It makes sense. But if you work in beauty, you often do your comp shops and whatever within other beauty retail, and maybe within other beauty retail in your own country. But the amount of times I see the real light bulb moments coming from when that person goes and looks at furniture retail in Scandinavia or somewhere totally different. This is the thing. We get often the beginning of our best ideas come from unusual places. Yeah. So that's very much what I'll try and do in New York, and what I always try to do is piece together something that takes people on an unusual journey, that into different places.
Can I ask you, Jack? A lot of my clients are developers, so with the bigger mixed use schemes, and obviously vacancy has been massive since COVID, and looking at data mining gamification on empty windows. So obviously the old-fashioned way of doing everything is coming soon, you know, and you have just the developer's logo on the window saying store open or coming soon, whatever the shop is. And I was talking with 3DWD, Dion Powell. I don't know if you know him. He's amazing. Yeah. And talking to him about the opportunities and possibilities. And I wondered if you'd seen any examples of where, let's just say Gucci are going to open up a store in 6 months or whatever it's going to be. And instead of the logo of the developer on the window, it's actually the 3D version of the store. But you can actually order some shoes from the store if you plug in your information on the shop window or however. Have you seen anything like that?
Yeah. So you get, it's a really interesting point. You get that a lot, actually. Luxury brands have got good, traditional luxury brands have got good at doing that within some of their hoarding. So classic example will be in Paris. If you go to and I forget the name of it, basically it's off the Champs-Elysees, the kind of classic luxury district. And you get things like whenever Dior is making over their kind of flagship, they'll cover the hoardings in something amazing. But then I've noticed more recently they'll have elements like a giant QR code that might give you like an experience of some of what they might be selling in the store. And it'll often link to like a kind of sort of ring-fenced online environment, right, where you can just buy a special selection of stuff that they're going to do. So there are versions of that. I think it's a really good point, though, because I don't see it as much happening probably in the mass market.
Yeah, like I'm surprised. Yeah,
and it makes it such a I would think an easy opportunity to do something better in that, you know, just in those gaps between tenants, right, you know, in those kind of dead moments. I think it's a really good point. I see it more in the luxury end and not enough.
I think there's opportunities, like you say, for developers just to promote and highlight different places, but also data mine for them, but get revenues in for the properties or the stores or the brands, you know, whatever. It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
Do you believe? I mean, you said you were biased towards stores. I'm definitely biased towards stores versus online. I do shop online though, and you know the trend I always say on resale and thrift is growing tremendously. Like it's popular with young shoppers. If I was going to open my own retail chain, I would go into resale. Like I've done luxury, I've done fast fashion, I've done coffee, I've done everything technology. I think I would go into resale. How do you see that trend growing? And then is there any brands with reselling that are actually embracing technology? Because I wonder about that. Like, how does technology play into resell?
Yeah, so you have, there's a few interesting things in this. So firstly, there's a few e-com startups who are doing things like, there's one, I can't remember the name of them, there's a few doing this, where it's like a plugin for your search engine that will allow, and then what it allows is if you're looking, so say I type in Patagonia jacket, it will actually default to secondhand versions of that. So it uses AI, and it will go through automatically. It'll be able to recognize secondhand versions of the jacket I'm looking for before it shows me new ones, which is awesome. Simple technology. And then so I think bigger brands are starting to tap into that, whether they can you can almost automate resale going into your regular e-commerce. So you're not just making resale like this separate platform, you're putting it front and center. So that's definitely starting to happen. And I think, so from a tech point of view, that's sort of the big one. The other thing that I think I've heard a couple of use cases for AI on this. I think ThreadUp have done this maybe, but where essentially they are using AI to try to automate the, I can't think of the word, but like the consignment process and kind of, you know,
consignment is a real issue, right? Like with people. That,
and that's more luxury, but I think apparently even for a lot of people in that kind of below luxury but premium sector. So again, you look at someone like Patagonia or, you know, really quality outdoor wear where a jacket might be 400 quid. Consignment actually really matters, that you know that you're buying something proper and knowing where it's come from. And I think there's a lot of work going into how AI can automate that, because that's a massive barrier, you know.
And I think and I think if brands could figure that out, they could actually start the recycle through their own like I know that there's companies right now that are like creating websites, and they're doing it for brands where they're saying, you know, be part of the sustainability movement, like capture that. You can have that back within your own brand. You can resell, like get people to bring it back and you resell it, as opposed to it being on like, you know, third-party platforms or whatever, which is never going to go away, because Poshmark and Deepak and all of those are really, really popular with young people.
Yeah.
And I have a Poshmark store. I just put my closet on it. I'm like, well, if it's gone next week, it's gone, right? Like I don't know. I grew up in an antique shop. I think that's where it comes from. But you know, no, but I do think there's something to be said for like not like that whole sustainability movement with young people. My daughter will not buy anything unless it's thrift. She just won't do it, right?
Yeah, yeah. And you have, and that's the bit that is fascinating to me. If you look at two of the biggest, particularly in Europe, and I think it's very similar in the US, if you look at two of the biggest growing kind of fashion marketplaces at the moment, Shein and Vinted at the same time.
Yeah.
Right? And often the same customers. In fact, and I'll talk a little bit about this in New York. Shein is the biggest seller on Vinted, which is mad, right? There's like more than 16 million garments from Shein, right? It's total crap. I mean, it's ridiculous. I don't know how you're going to like, there's no long term, but what it mostly is people buying it and going, oh God, this is actually pretty crap, you know, which is not surprising because it costs £2.
Right.
And then people are putting it on there for like £1, but they're going, do you know what? Like, it's better than nothing. And so there's this weird tension in those things because it's often the same customer. And also what I think people are figuring out is, what is the commonality? Like, how is someone doing the sort of most unsustainable thing as a customer, but also the most sustainable? But it's because price is the thing. Both those environments are giving you the cheapest clothes. But a lot of people are talking about Shein, but they should be talking actually about Vinted as well, because that's the really interesting thing. There's energy there for both. And I think a lot of retailers should be looking at both and going, you don't have to just offer cheap crap, because look, customers are just as interested in secondhand if it's done well. And Vinted have nailed it. Yeah.
Vinted have nailed it. Yeah. My daughter was telling me about that the other day. She had a thrift store when she was 16 in Canada. She would like literally go to Value Village, buy it, and then resell it online.
Yeah. There's all these, do you know, it's amazing though. There's all these kind of young people and students just earn a few £100 a month on the site through Vinted. I love it. I think it's it's as much a B2B marketplace as a place to buy stuff. It's awesome.
Yeah. Okay, amazing. Well, so what's like, I know you can't tell us everything that, you know, that you're going to be talking about next week, but what's one thing that you're really excited about sharing, just as a snippet for people?
Yeah, so I'm gonna kind of start the whole thing, I think, a little bit with just my experience, my perspective on AI indoors, by talking about the fact that I think it's in a much better place now. But when I first started, kind of maybe like a couple of years ago, and the Gen AI thing exploded, I was very frustrated because I'd go to NRF and places, and I just felt like there was so much excitement and hype. But I work with retailers primarily, right? That's my audience, and a lot of store people. And within weeks, they all just found it really annoying because they're like, I know it's happening, but what does it do? And I just have these companies just shouting at me, AI, and it's like, what is it? What does it do? What problems does it answer?
Like demystify.
Yeah, completely, and just shouting, getting excited. And we're at the beginning of that hype cycle. And I think what I'm going to talk a lot about in my presentation is the fact that we're now in a bit where actually, if you get over that, and I'll talk about this a bit in my presentation, but almost we're at the beginning of it maybe becoming slightly more boring. And I think that's really important. I think AI needs to be less exciting. I think we need to start just talking more about the companies that are going to go, do you know what? We're going to, across your 1,000 stores, we're going to save you, 2-3% across a year through this AI, right? And that's boring, but do you know what that means? That means that the store survives, people keep their jobs, long term they grow, and all the stores are in your malls and high streets. That's the stuff we need to get excited about, not, oh my God, look at what AI can do. And it's all, because it doesn't mean anything. Like what actual real, often boring problems does it answer? So I think in a big sense, that's what I'll be talking about, how almost the way we think about AI in retail needs to change a little, not getting quite so excited about it for the sake of it, but going, actually, what is it going to solve? And not just making it this mad thing that tech bros scream about.
I like it because my talk is all about mindset and AI. So that is a shift in mindset, right? Like we were talking before we got on the live, I've been talking to ChatGPT all week. We've actually called her Meloria in our company.
It's a good name. I like it.
Well, Meloria means positivity in Latin. So that's why she named it Meloria, because what it did is it made ChatGPT become like a person or an employee that we would go to for mundane tasks. It's like an admin, like for an assistant. It would be like, okay, well, have you asked Meloria that? And so it took the hype out of it, like, oh, this whole crazy thing, to like, actually, where can we fit it into our business and how can we use it and the application of it? And I've been asking Meloria questions all week for my presentation next week around like mindset, human expertise. So I'm really excited to hear about what you're going to say, because I think that's actually a good point. Whenever you go to NRF, it's like razzle dazzle. But like as an operator, you're like, what does that mean? Can somebody put it into reality? Because saving 3% across that many stores is sexy. Like that means like everybody's going to have jobs. Payroll, you know, you're going to have people on the floor servicing again, because you know, we had to take people off the floor because we were spending money on things like all this digital content creation and e-com where money went versus being in the stores. So I think there's actually a panel in the afternoon that Laura was telling me about with the head of Emma Taylor. She's the head of Reese for Americas.
Yeah.
And she's using it for things like what you're talking about, to actually put people back in the store and take stuff off the store employees so that they can just focus on sales and service. Exciting.
Exactly. Yeah, that's where the sweet spot is. And, you know, I'm biased, but I still think most of the magic in store is going to be stuff involving people and all the same stuff people have always loved about shopping. So just get AI supporting them. I know this is kind of this is a well-established theme now, and it's a good one. But for me, it's even going a step back. How do you create that focus on tech supporting? Well, you need to actually stop getting so excited about it and having maybe the egos of some of these big tech companies just pulled down a little bit and going, you know, this is great, but you're supporting. You're not king of the world. You're, you know, one of the poor.
Well, look, you know, a part of mine thing is that, you know, when the tech goes down, how are you serving people then, right? So if you can't be too reliant on technology, because if look at CrowdStrike glitch day, it took the world out, didn't it? So I can't wait to hear how all of our speeches tie in so we get it. So many perspectives, right?
Yeah, I can see Kimberly in the chat as well. Kimberly is going to be online with me tomorrow. Yeah, can't wait.
Brilliant.
Kimberly Jack, she's amazing as well. I just feel very grateful that you said yes.
No, it's fun. This is it for me. It's just I'm looking forward to speaking, but just looking forward to meeting lots of interesting, like-minded people, learning some stuff, you know, and having a lovely day. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Bring your party shoes. We're all going to dance on the stage after. I'm scaring everyone with that one.
Party trainers, okay. Party sneakers, is that right?
You can dance in trainers, flip-flops, slippers. I don't care.
It's funny, you know, we're bringing the human into the AI experience because it's not a trade show. It's an amazing, intimate space for 200 leaders to gather with technology sponsors that have been very generous. And what I love about what the technology sponsors are doing are they're creating educational sessions. Versus, you know, interviewing a customer about what everything's great about them, you know, because you hear that all the time when you're at conferences, right? Like I've been interviewed on a stage. It's like, let me tell you how we use it and how great it is because you're just paying me to be here. But what I love about what they're doing is they're actually creating educational content to educate you. So if you're a retail leader, a decision maker, there is still room for you to sign up. I'm going to put the link under this video. It's a free event. Microsoft has sponsored it. So, which, you know, tickets for conferences like this can be very expensive for brands to be able to attend. So to get into the room and listen to somebody like Jack, Audra, Kimberly, you know, Jasmine, Laura and her crew, Christine Rousseau, she's another Rethink Retail expert, but all of these technology providers, it's golden, especially in the city that I love, which is the mecca of retail, right? New York City. Times Square. You'll be able to do some competitive shops while you're there. Anyway, so I want to wrap up today, but thank you, Jack, for being on. I can't wait to meet you live in person next week and hear you speak. And we'll see you next week live in New York.
Thanks so much, April. Yeah, really excited. Lovely to see you as always, Audra. Thanks, guys.
Lovely. Can't wait to see you all. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.